Hey there, friends. Welcome to another live stream with Legally Armed America. I'm honored to have Ben Sanderson, the Deputy Director of Federal Affairs from Gun Owners of America, with me today, GOA, as you guys may more affectionately know them. As you know, we had Eric Pratt on last week with GOA, and Ben is going to be doing something with me that's going to be a recurring theme where we're going to bring him on here to talk about some of the, I guess, main issues regarding the Second Amendment. It's tough these days. A lot of us that cover Second Amendment related stuff, some of the things that we put out, it's an ever-changing thing. I mean, Ben, you can probably expand on this here in a second, but it's a moving target. It's rarely ever going to stay in one place for very long. So it's going to be a good way for us to recap at least the week. And I want to thank Ben for agreeing to do that. Plus, Ben suggested doing it on Friday, which is best for me because it allows us to kind of recoup and recap the rest of the week. Ben, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Paul. It's great to be here. Yeah, you're right. It's an exciting time to be in the Second Amendment, especially in lobbying here in D.C. But like you said, it's a moving target. Every week is something different.
Yeah, and interesting stuff as far as I think a lot of us we're waiting for things to happen right now with Pam Bondi, Kash Patel, and all that. And I think we have to, and I mean this, I don't mean this in a sarcastic way. I think we have to be a little bit more patient and understand that these things are not going to happen overnight. And we'll get more into that here at the end. I want to mention that for now, we're going to call this, and let me get this right. What did I say? Now I lost my notes here. Anyway, be uninfringible or something like that is what we're going to call this segment whenever we do it. I just want to make it something to where we start to brand it, and it's going to be something outside of our normal videos that we do here on Legally Armed America. Ben, I'm going to turn it over to you for a second because and that's another thing, guys. I'm letting Ben set the agenda for what we're going to be talking about because he is a whole lot closer to it. Ben, you guys are in that DC, Virginia area, I assume. Is that where you guys mostly are located?
Yeah, the entire Federal Affairs Department is right around D.C. Unfortunately, we're really close to the swamp, but I mean, I grew up around here, so I'm used to it.
Okay. Well, we're gonna let you, since you're closer to everything, dictate what we talk about, mainly because, again, with it changing so quickly, I want to make sure that I'm not behind on this. And one of the things that you mentioned you want to talk about was the continuing resolution. And I think that's really important for us to talk about because there's a whole lot of other, in fact, this is, speaking of moving target, this is literally happening right now as far as voting on all this stuff. So I want you to kind of go over some of that, some of the what I consider to be wins for the Second Amendment community regarding that. And you guys are at the forefront of all that.
Of course. Yeah. So this entire story goes back about a year when we originally first passed the first continuing resolution in 2024. The biggest thing to know is this is along the lines of a funding bill in which the government is funded for a certain period of time at the previous levels. It's a lot of mumbo jumbo, but essentially it's what keeps the government going. The larger scale picture here is it's the funding fight, which they call appropriations. And Gun Owners America has really stepped up in the last few years when I've been here on focusing on different ways to pass pro-gun legislation through appropriations. Not everything can get passed through appropriations, unfortunately, but we're able to get a lot of great things passed first. To list off the three that we're going to talk about today would be defunding the ATF, ending the veteran gun ban, as well as protecting protecting the NFA wait time so that the ATF can't weaponize that against law-abiding gun owners. And
a lot of this stuff was kind of pushed or made worse during the Biden administration, I assume, correct?
100% correct. Yeah, a lot. The ATF increased their funding before this continuing resolution. The veterans gun ban has actually been going on for quite some time. But to talk about this one, we actually were able to cut almost $122 million from the ATS budget. That represents about a 10% cut from the overall budget. And while this is a small number in the total hope of 100% of the budget, it is still a great step forward. And really, it's the groundwork we need to work with Republicans in the House to say, hey, cutting the ATF budget isn't going to lead to an increase in crime. It's not going to lead to an increase in any public safety issues. Instead, it's showing you how much of that money is actually worthless and isn't actually going towards anything useful.
Right. And, one thing that I want to point out real quick that it's funny you mentioned, and it's a great point, that defunding or taking some of the money away from the ATF is not going to make the community less safe. I think that's a really massive misconception that so many people out there think. And one of the things I've talked to Eric about, and I'm always very vocal about this, is that they put so much value and stock into this silly little stupid tracing program that they have. There's not one crime that's ever been stopped regarding tracing, and there's not one person that's even a minuscule amount safer because of this silly little tracing program. It's simply a money pit that they use, and they claim that they're taking guns off the street and making people safer. But taking a gun off the street, if it's from somebody like me or you, doesn't make the streets any safer. In fact, it may theoretically make it less safe because you and I are going to be protecting ourselves and other people with it. So it blows me away the way so many of these people, especially the Democrats in Congress, think that, oh, we're taking money from the ATF. That automatically equates to a less safe public out there.
100%. And to add on to that, the Democrats really pushed forward the idea that defunding the ATF was the exact same thing as defunding the police. And while the ATF can claim to be a law enforcement agency, a lot of the funding doesn't actually go towards protecting the public. It goes towards pushing their anti-gun narratives and their anti-gun propaganda that is essentially a money pit, like you said, at this point, and it doesn't do anything to keep us safer.
Right. Right. Exactly. So you had some, let me put your slide up here on screen real quick. You had some things that you guys were focused on about the amounts of money that you were pushing for, at least things not to get funded via the ATF. Can you talk about these real quick?
Yeah, of course. So breaking it down, that's $75 million being taken from the construction budget of the ATF. Originally, what that was supposed to be for was to increase and improve the Martinsville, West Virginia facility of the ATF, which I don't know if many people know this, but it does house the ATF's tracing center, as well as their nearly 1 billion record registry. And that's something we've been fighting for a long time. I don't know if you've seen the stories about it, Paul, but the roofs are collapsing, the floors are collapsing because they have so many pieces of paper there. And instead of, just ending and taking away their ability to improve that, we'd like to get rid of the entire thing and make it a lot easier on the taxpayers to say, hey, we're not funding an illegal registry anymore.
And you've got some strong supporters in Congress regarding that also. Congressman Cloud was on here a couple of weeks ago, really talking about that. I know you guys have worked closely with him, and kudos to both of you guys for working together on that. But that's something that I think so many of the American people don't realize. Like he and I were discussing back then, when all this came out, it was 900 and something million records. We know it's well past the billion by now.
100%. Yeah. Representative Cloud and his team have been awesome to work with. They really took a leap of faith, fighting for us and getting this bill first introduced back a few years ago. Not many people were willing to co-sponsor and sign on because they didn't think it was as big of an issue. But thanks to him and his staff's work and our work together, we've been able to show the American public and show the rest of Congress, actually, this is a huge deal and flies directly in the face of the Firearm Owner Protection Act. This year, we were fortunate enough to have a Senate co-sponsor as well. That's Senator Reich out of Idaho. It's the first time we've had a Senate companion bill, and that's really great. It's becoming more mainstream. We're really pushing it forward. And the more people we get educated in Congress on this, the more likely it is to pass.
Now, that $47 million that we're looking at, also from the budget, operating budget, is that administrative fees?
That's administrative fees, that's salaries, that reduces their ability to target, whether lawsuits, whether it's sending out agents on overtime. It really reduces their ability to infringe on American Second Amendment rights by limiting the amount of funds they have available to go after certain things.
So I know that, especially, and I kind of drilled down to the specific topic of the body worn cameras before. I think they were looking at $37 million for the body worn cameras, and I forget how many full-time employees they were adding to that to have to manage the servers and all that kind of stuff, the data that came in and how to house all the video. I know there were a lot of other areas, and I think you guys, and I may have your slide here. Let me move the next slide. It may have something on there. I know that we're looking. Yeah, I see that. The bottom bullet down there, increase on total number of ATF agents working on BSCA, Bipartisan Safer Communities Act, by 350%. How many additional people were they looking for to have to administer working on that Bipartisan Safer Communities Act?
I wish I had a very specific number for you, but unfortunately I don't. I can tell you, as a result of our budget cuts, an entire class of special agents was cut, and they weren't graduated and they weren't hired by the ATF. I wish I could give you a more specific number on that one, but I don't have that in front of me.
No, that's okay. That's okay. I was curious because, one of the things that we look at is, and it's so funny to see, I'm sure you guys follow the ATF on social media platforms. I do on all of them. I'm blocked on some of them, but I can still comment on their Facebook. And it's funny because I know the ATF has not, with Cash Patel in there, has not done what we want them to do quick enough. But one thing I have definitely noticed is that they don't brag about these silly little infringements on people's gun rights anymore. Now they talk about, I saw something the other day was actually something related, not even gun related. And I was like, these people have changed completely on what their focus is. Now, that's not to say that they're a good organization. I'm not implying that they're doing the work of the people anymore or at this point. But it's funny to see that they see the writing on the wall. And I think some of these people, even though they are not wanting to, it seems like they're trying to fall in line and at least get less infringible, if you will, with how they try to administer all this. And looking at these bullet points you have right here, I wonder how much of this stuff they look at whenever we talk about it and realize that it was waste, or if they think they actually are missing something. Because that was probably one of the biggest themes that I see, themes rather, that I see right now, is people think when you cut, no one who is against cutting, and it's funny because how they will protect the waste, but nobody wants to imagine that any of that money is waste. They automatically assume that we're giving up something that is bad for us. Do you guys get any pushback from any of the members of Congress on that? Like, are they as ignorant as some of the people are on the left about not knowing that the ATF really doesn't do anything useful for us?
Well, I can say, bringing it back to the story about the Democrats complaining about us wanting to defund the ATF and calling it police defunding, they really do believe that the ATF is a law enforcement agency and that, we're hypocrites because we criticize them for wanting to defund the police, but now it's okay for us to defund the police. But not many people understand that a lot of what the ATF does isn't about going after cartels. It isn't about, protecting communities from violent gangs or anything like that. And if that was the case with the ATF, it'd be a lot harder to fight them, I'll be honest. And we wouldn't have the same, grassroots supports, and we wouldn't have the same, Republican congressmen going after the ATF in hearings. It'd be a lot harder for us to say, hey, we need to defund these guys going after criminals, going after gangs. But the reality is they're going after law-abiding Americans for pieces of plastic, for, a trigger that they think shoots too fast, or anything that they don't like. And that's probably the biggest difference is they create the laws that they then enforce, which is a nightmare. Normal police follow the laws as written by Congress or as written by their local state jurisdictions. Instead, the ATF is the judge, jury, and almost executioner in this case.
Well, and it's funny that I guess the hypocrisy and the selective enforcement that the ATF is a part of. Let's talk about the Glock switch thing right now. Personally, I don't think Glock switches should be illegal. I think we should have the right to put them on a firearm and use them if we want to. I don't aim at people and shoot my firearm at them, so I'm not breaking the law. So I wouldn't do that with or without a Glock switch. So I don't think that has anything. That should not be something that is controllable, but nevertheless, it is. They go on to complain about needing to implement new laws because of the Glock switches, but who was policing the importation of all these Glock switches? Believe me, they're not all 3D printed. Hundreds of thousands of these things came in from China. So them trying to say that, you try to demonize a 3D printer out there, that ain't where they're coming from. We all know that's not where they're. I'm not saying somebody can't and doesn't make them in their own home, but that ain't where they're coming from. I have not heard a whole bunch of 3D printers buzzing when you go down into these high crime areas. Trust me when I tell you, I don't think these people are creating them themselves. Where was the ATF when the hundreds of thousands of these things were being imported into the country? I mean, did they let them come in? Heck no, in Fast and Furious, they might have brought them in themselves just to create something.
Yeah, you're 100% right. It's creating a lot of, it's drumming up a false problem. You're right. A lot of these are being imported from overseas, and the ATF complains about them being on the street, and that's why we need to ban 3D printed firearms, or we need to regulate the individual frame and individual components of a firearm, so that way no one could get a gun without going through 20 different background checks, which was part of the frame and receiver rule, essentially.
Right.
But you're right. It is a problem that's further down the road, or starts at the beginning of the issue, the supply chains, or, just crime in general. A criminal isn't going to not rob a bank because they don't have a gun. If they could use a knife, or a mass murderer could use a car instead of a gun. So
Right.
really, it's trying to legislate against evil, which is extremely hard.
Right. That's exactly right. But I mean, we're speaking in a vacuum at this point, and it's in fact with the viewers on here too, same thing. I mean, we talk about this stuff all the time, and you just feel silly talking about it because we're all like, "Yeah, I know." It's not like it's something new that we have to talk about. I do want to bring up this slide. This is something that you guys had created regarding that tracing center that you talked about a few minutes ago. I didn't realize that it was going to be $44 million for that tracing center. That's pretty impressive to me that they were bold enough to ask for that kind of money for a building to house illegal records. That's pretty funny.
You're 100% right. So we're happy we took a big chunk out of their budget with that one.
One thing that I wanted to point out that I've pointed out, and I've done, I'm a bit of a numbers nerd, so I've done a lot of my own digging into a lot of these records as far as the USAID stuff and all that. It's interesting to me, the online databases that you have access to, that you can go in there and dig and really follow these things. And one of the things that I ran across, and I put a video out on this a while back, was this very thing. This blows my mind. I've done several stories on the whole body worn camera thing with the ATF, mainly because once the Malinowski thing happened, I was like, well, wait a minute, you guys, you have it in your budget, and it's some amounts of dollars have been approved over the years for body worn cameras. They just claim that only certain offices are implementing the use of those body worn cameras. And of course, the ones where people are either being murdered or whatever, those happen to not be the offices where they're implemented. But I found it a little ironic, but more upsetting than anything, that nobody else picks this kind of stuff out. I'm talking about from the federal government and managing their own costs. Is that the ATF, which is a part of the Department of Justice, requested or was currently requesting $37.8 million for body worn cameras. Meanwhile, the FBI, which is also a part of the Department of Justice, same group, same managing that big pile of money, it's just in a different sub bucket, was awarding at least at a minimum of $80 million in grants for body worn cameras. And my thinking is, wait a minute, if I'm over this organization and I have one of my departments asking for $40 million for body worn cameras and another one giving away $80 million in body worn cameras, that sounds like a beautiful thing. I can solve my own problem. I can give my department $40 million worth of cameras and still give $40 million worth of grants away for other departments to receive body worn cameras. But they don't see it like that. They see it like, oh, we got turned down for our body worn cameras. Meanwhile, the FBI is out there divvying out all this money to all these organizations. And I say a minimum because they had a minimum award for at least 40 of those accounts. That's not even including the category 2 or the next category where they would be giving out. So they budgeted for at least $80 million worth of grants to be given out. And it blows my mind that nobody calls these people on this stuff. Not that I'm a genius or anything, but I didn't have to dig too deep into this stuff. You just start finding things and you see things that contradict one another. And you're like, wait a minute, no one's really looking at this. I mean, we can't, you and I, there's no way we could run our household like this. There's no way. If we ran our household like this, we're giving out more money than what we're borrowing and making. It's the silliest thing in the world. You guys being closer to it over there, how frustrating is it? And is it that frustrating? Because I often wonder, when you see silliness like this, is there like a side conversation that politicians in Washington have, that they know that what we see, and I say we, I'm talking about the general public, the things that we see that come across as actual news, do they chuckle about that, knowing that that's BS? I mean, that they know that they're wasting, or do these people really genuinely feel like, oh, we're not wasting any money, this is all going for the good and the betterment of the people?
Well, I think one of the biggest issues with all this funding and all these awards is there's so many of them. I'm lucky enough to I only have to focus on the gun related ones, and that still takes up a majority of my day. Right now, we're right in the middle of that with appropriation requests. So that means we're sending off funding requests or defunding requests, which is most of the cases actually, to a bunch of offices and say, hey, if you include this in the next budget bill or the next funding bill, we can end this anti-gun program, or we can end this anti-gun policy that the ATF or the DOJ currently has. Now, if you think about it, I think who's the best person? Senator Rand Paul. He goes through and he lists off a bunch of the waste, fraud, and abuse. He's been doing that for several years. But the issue is there's just so much of it that a single congressman can't handle every single thing and can't look. There's often thousands of pages. And I only have to control F for guns, gun control, violence prevention, all those things. It still takes us, 12, 16 hours.
Right.
Those are definitely not fun nights. But when you're looking at the whole scale of the government, which is huge, and there's so much waste there, I don't want to say any of the congressmen are being intentionally evil or even ignorant. It's just there's so much; it's almost impossible to go over every little thing.
Well, I wish there was a way, and obviously this is pie in the sky. I don't expect this, but I wish there was a way for us to know which of these, and I'm talking about Republicans and Democrats, which of these politicians are receiving dirty money from some of these embezzlement schemes that they have going out there. So you would know just to not even ask them questions, because you're never going to get a straight answer from them. Unless I'm completely wrong, I wish there were more Thomas Masseys out there to where we could just go ask him, hey, dude, can you give me the straight truth and feel like you're getting the truth? Because I know, and this is not representative of GOA's view, this is my view. I would never go to a Lindsey Graham and ask him an honest question about corruption, because I know he can't give me one, because I know the man has gotten paid off in so many different areas. So political party doesn't have a say in all this kind of stuff. I just wish we had more ways to know these people are the ones you don't even need to bother asking a question for, because you're not going to get a good answer. These guys over here, they're going to give you a legitimate answer. And for you guys having to deal with that on your end and see these people face to face, I can't imagine the difficulty of dealing with some of these people.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of work, but that's exactly what we're here for. We're here for the people who don't have time for what is essentially a full-time job, fighting for our rights here, and it's more than a full-time job sometimes. Spending a lot of late nights, looking through these bills, like I said. But even talking to each of these individual staffers, maybe even from offices that don't appear outwardly pro Second Amendment, it still is great to talk with them and inform them of, hey, here's why most people are voting this way. Here's why people are pushing this way. And it really is a job about education.
Right.
That's all lobbying is. It's educating,
Right.
It's explaining things out. And each of the individual people on the grassroots level, everyone watching this can be a lobbyist in their own term of just calling up their local senators and representatives and being like, hey, I'd really like to talk to you about X, Y, and Z.
Right. I'm curious. And you can, I know there's some things you probably can't tell us, at least not in a live setting, but let's talk briefly about the Pam Bondi, Kash Patel. Donald Trump had that executive order for Pam Bondi to look into some of the infringements by the Biden administration from 2021 going forward to now, and look at some of those things, putting it out to the public, essentially saying, hey, what do you think we need to talk about? You guys did a really good job of that. I'm talking about GOA as far as rallying the troops and trying to get people to turn in the things that were more important to them. And the deadline was Sunday for that, for Pam Bondi to submit something to the White House. Now, since nothing officially has come out, is there anything unofficial that you guys know of that has been maybe submitted that we're just not talking about it yet? Or did Pam Bondi forget to turn her homework in?
We're not aware of anything official or unofficial at this point. We are hoping that because it's taking a little bit longer and something wasn't submitted right on the deadline, that means they're taking their time with it. They're increasing, or they're definitely taking a closer look at it. I mean, the first executive order was a great example of that, in which the president didn't just rush out and undo, X, Y, and Z. He wants to take a little bit of a break. He wants to take a pause. He wants us to circle up and be like, hey, what are the actual issues that we're facing now? And to hear from the experts and to hear from the people, which we believe is really important to get an overarching broad experience and also insight into what are the issues Americans are facing with these Second Amendment infringements. And by doing that, hopefully we have a comprehensive report that we can target all of these things across multiple different departments, rather than just maybe picking out 3 high ticket items.
Yeah. Well, and I'm one of those glass half full kind of guys. I'm an overwhelming skeptic that has a positive outlook. It's the weirdest combination, but it is what it is, and I'm proud of that. So I will say that in Trump's first term, clearly he is not a quote gun guy. Like, I'm not saying he's anti-gun. What I'm saying is I consider you and I gun guys. We sit down, we could talk about legislation. We know what is crossing the line. We know what things you would never propose. You and I would never say, you know what? Screw the due process. Take the guns and let's, you know what I mean? That's things you and I would never say. So Trump could not have that conversation with us. However, I think he realizes, or at least somebody helped him realize, that the bump stock issue and the due process issue were things that he probably should not have said openly, even if he felt that way. And by putting this EO out, this executive order out, I just got the feeling that this was his way of saying, all right, I kind of stepped on it last time. Maybe I need to see what the pulse of the people are out there, since we did have a bit of a hand in getting him reelected or getting him elected. Maybe this is his way of reading the room now, instead of just going in there and saying something and assuming that we're all going to follow him and think that he's speaking on our behalf when he wasn't. So, I mean, I'm hopeful of that this was a way for him to right the wrongs that he had in the first administration by just doing things in a knee-jerk fashion instead of feeling them out. What's your thoughts on that?
I think you're right that the president has kind of shown he wants to take a second. He wants to breathe. He wants to let these ideas breathe out. We can look at his campaign promises, which were to sign concealed carry reciprocity when it passes, to undo the Biden administration's anti-gun rules. And I think that's really important here, is taking that pause and being, hey, which rules do you guys want us to target first? Which rules do we need to target first? Which
Right.
rules are the major issue? Because there could be a million different rulings from the ATF, but if we're not focusing on the most important ones first, it's going to take a longer time to actually get to, the pistol brace rule, to the frame and receiver rule, to the engage in the business rule. And while we have several lawsuits currently going through the court, we also need to circle up with the DOJ lawyers and make sure we don't accidentally create bad precedent or create no precedent by either giving up these lawsuits or mooting them completely.
I'm curious, and this might be like a civics 101 course here. We all know that the ATF, they submit rules, they don't create laws. That has to go through Congress, obviously. But how hard, and why can't we just say everything that the ATF assumed as being a rule that would be enforced as a law, just get rid of all of that? In other words, they didn't go through Congress. So why does anyone have to go through Congress to undo what the ATF did? I mean, again, I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but to me, I feel like we should give the ATF a list of things that they implemented that Congress did not approve and say, okay, first of all these things don't exist anymore. I mean, what's the harm in that?
So you're right. It doesn't have to go through Congress to undo these things, but it can, which is, 2 years ago during the pistol brace rule, we tried to get something passed called the Congressional Review Act, which would essentially have Congress take a vote on the pistol brace rule. It passed the House. We were super excited about that. Unfortunately, it died in the Senate, meaning that the ATF's pistol brace rule could go forward. But I think what you're talking about right now is undoing the ATF undoing their own rules. So that is possible. However, it does need to go through the Administrative Procedures Act, which is essentially the same way that they implemented this rule. They have to unimplement the rule following the same notice and comment period,
Right.
because otherwise there's a potential for litigation from anti-gun groups. The same way that we sued over the implementation of these rules,
Right.
the anti-gun groups could sue over the de-implementation of these rules, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it totally does. A good explanation. And honestly, I think as a law-abiding gun owner myself, I'd be okay with the process proceeding the way it's supposed to. I don't mind the comment period. I mean, give me, what is it, 90 days or however long it's got to be. I mean, I'm cool with waiting that long. I think people want to see something happening. And the executive order was a step in the right direction, but it's been radio silent since then. And I think every day and every week that goes by with no word from the White House or Pam Bondi, the Second Amendment community is going to start to lose confidence in the current administration overall. Because look, let's face it, a lot of the guys in our community, they're one issue voters. They don't care about a lot of the other stuff out there. They want Second Amendment rights protected. And when I feel like, especially you guys as a gun rights organization, we don't want to lose those people. We need their support. In fact, I've seen people in the comments here talk about they just have updated their GOA membership. Not saying it's all about membership, but that certainly helps. It gives you guys the tools you need to fight these fights with. So I just don't want this to go on so long that we get to a point where everybody shrugs their shoulders and say, here we are again. Nothing's going to change.
No, 100%. I agree. I can tell you from our end, we're not stopping. We're pushing forward every avenue possible to undo a lot of these rules. We're doing that in the appropriations fight right now. I've been filling out forms all afternoon. Actually, it's mind numbing work, but it's work that needs to be done to figure out how we can defund the rules, how we can
Right.
defund anti-gun programs, and to the people worried about something not happening immediately, I'd say honestly, it's a little bit better that we take our time. The administration takes their time, listens to the experts, listens to the people, and produces a great product rather than rushing out a maybe okay product that doesn't do everything that we want it to.
Right. And not to put you on the spot, but I have mixed feelings about the Cash Patel splitting responsibilities between FBI and ATF. I feel like there's so much to clean up in both sides. I would want 100% of his focus on either one of those organizations. I don't really want him to split it 50-50, to be quite honest with you. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, how are we going to come to expect half a job on either one, or more in the FBI, less in the ATF, or their assistants? I know the Dan Bongino appointment in the FBI and all that. Are you hearing anything on the ATF side? Is there going to be somebody that's going to be his deputy guy besides Marvin? Please let it be somebody besides Marvin Richardson. Have you heard any other names being put out there as far as somebody who might really run the place, but just be considered the deputy director?
We haven't heard anything yet. There's lots of rumors swirling around. I don't want to throw anything out because obviously some of the rumors that were swirling around first were wrong about the acting director of the ATF. Um, but yeah, to cut a little bit to ease everyone's mind a little bit, I think this was a great move to put Kash Patel as acting director because, like you mentioned, that the deputy director Marvin Richardson has been around for forever, and he's been he's been right next to Dadelbach, Garland, everyone
Oh yeah.
pushing forward those anti-gun rules. So without someone being appointed head of the ATF, one of our guys, then honestly, the Marvin Richardson could continue on with all of these anti-gun rules. He could do everything he could to slow down the DOJ from undoing these or promoting pro Second Amendment stuff and instructing the career bureaucrats to continue on with the rules that are currently in place. Now, we had some issues with other career DOJ employees that are actually fighting us in our cases and pushing to create no precedent and create other issues down the line in a lot of our lawsuits. So I can say that Kash Patel is truly a constitutionalist. He's truly
Yeah.
he's right in line with a lot of our Gun Owners of America people, and he's definitely a gun guy. But I understand why people might be a little concerned about him splitting attention simply because there's just so much. But I can tell you, he's more than a man enough for a job, I've heard.
Yeah. Well, for the record, too, on Marvin Richardson, I'm still amazed that he's in there. Maybe that's just to appease people and not have everybody revolt yet. But for those that don't know, Marvin Richardson actually received an award for Waco for burning women and children alive in Waco. So that's how much his history goes back. They felt like that was worthy of an actual reward or an award at that time. So yeah, that's who's the acting director as far as who was in there before Cash. I don't know how that goes now. I haven't been to their website in a while. Is Marvin still the acting or the deputy director?
Yes, he's still the deputy director.
Okay. Oof, I'd like to see some changes there, but whatever. As long as there's checks and balances, that's all I'm asking for is checks and balances. I think that's important in this. We're just getting tired of getting beat over the head with stupid, silly little rules, and I know you guys are too. Look, Ben, you do a lot over there for GOA, and I will say this too. I know you do a lot of the is the Minuteman minutes that you do.
The Minuteman moment, yeah.
Minuteman moment. Where can people catch that at?
Yeah, you can go to our YouTube. That's Gun Owners on YouTube. We're also on Twitter, or sorry, X, Instagram with @Gun Owners. We post a lot of clips there. If you want the latest news, it's on our X. We're constantly updating that. We live tweet our committee hearings. We live tweet anything interesting happening. So that's probably the fastest way to get our information.
Okay. And if people want to sign up for the newsletter or sign up for GOA, how do they do that?
The best place to go would be gunowners.org. You can find it under the email sign-up list, or there's also membership options there as well.
Well, and I just want to say this to the people also. We had Eric on here, Eric Pratt, last week, vice president for you guys. And clearly, I want people to understand that don't equate GOA with NRA when it comes to spending. We have I feel like a very humble group of people. And I'm going to be real honest, Ben, a very small group of people. I mean, GOA is not top heavy by any stretch. You guys wear a lot of different hats. I know that because I've seen it. And I just want people to understand that the dollars that you guys spend, I understand that it may help pay your light bill, but that's not where the money goes. It's not going into Ben's pocket, Eric's pocket, or something like that. You guys truly invest a lot of money into the actual litigation for gun rights. And I think that's super important. That's what originally attracted me to you guys. You do get tired of seeing your money going to a $250,000 suit sometimes. That gets old. And I can say that I know that doesn't happen with GOA. That's why I'm proud to work with you guys. Appreciate you coming on here with us. You got anything closing that you'd like to share with the group?
I would just say stay in the fight. We've got to keep pushing. If we give up right now, we're on the offense for the first time in almost 6 years. It's a great place to be. It's not constantly fighting off each individual attack. It's pushing forward towards something greater. And this is our best opportunity in almost decades to push forward great legislation, to push forward great pro-Second Amendment beliefs. And it really comes down to bothering your congressman, talking to them and saying, hey, this is a great time. We need to do this. And we just stay tuned. There's hopefully a lot more great news coming.
Well, and to that point real quick, I think that we have a really, really small window with midterms coming up. That's not going to give us a whole lot of time to do anything. So I think that our window is about 1.5 years right now to get anything real accomplished. So I think it's important that we really seize the moment right now.
100% agree.
Ben, thanks for joining me, man. Look, guys, we're probably going to, Ben and I talked about this at least every 2 weeks. We'll be doing this for now. Maybe if we get to a point where there's enough information coming out that we can do this weekly. For now, we're looking at doing this every other week. And Ben, of course, thank you for joining me. And I look forward to some future episodes.
Thanks for having me, Paul.
Okay, man. Hang on the line, Ben.